Hello, I am Selena. Once, my sister gripped my hand, pleading with me not to abandon her. Yet years later, she shoved me out of a helicopter, murmuring, "You have always been a burden." My husband simply stood by, arms folded, watching me fall so they could profit $5 million and take over my company. They assumed I perished that day, but I survived. I even entered my own funeral. Do you believe betrayal of that kind ever truly vanishes? Or does it just lurk beneath the surface in those you trust the most? Tell me, could you have endured something like this? Share where you are listening from because the tale is far from finished. The chill in Aspen that morning seemed almost like a silent vow, as if it hinted that perhaps today might bring a change. I stood beside the helicopter, observing snowflakes disappear on my jacket, my breath forming clouds in the crisp mountain air while I tried to convince myself this journey was a new beginning instead of just another effort to mend a marriage, unraveling at the edges. Ryan's hands were firm as he secured the harness around my waist. The smile he wore was the familiar one he used with customers entering our showroom. It was warm, refined, rehearsed. "Happy anniversary," he said, planting a quick kiss on my cheek. I attempted to hold on to that warmth, let it seep into me, but the biting wind was too strong. Melissa was there as well. Her perfume was potent enough to overpower the scent of pine as she hugged me closely. "You deserve this day, Selena," she whispered, her voice gentle, her eyes filled with emotion. Moving away too fast as she took a step back. Her hair was flawless, her lipstick a rich crimson that made her teeth appear strikingly white when she smiled at the camera she was already holding up. The rotors began to spin, slicing through the air and catching the strands of hair I had neglected to smooth that morning. I climbed inside, settled into the seat, and glanced back at me and Ryan as they slid in next to me, their knees barely touching, their grins directed everywhere but at me. The pilot gave a thumbs up, and with a slight tremble, we lifted off. There is something about viewing the world from above that always made me believe in endless possibilities. The trees below were lightly coated in snow, the rivers flowing like silver threads winding through them. I wanted to believe this journey was a move toward something greater. Ryan's hand brushed against mine on the seat, and for a fleeting moment, I felt hope. Just maybe, we could mend what was broken. But May glanced over her shoulder at me, and her eyes held no warmth at all. I turned away, focusing on the scenery, pretending I did not notice the cold calculation hidden there. The helicopter veered left, revealing a panoramic view of the mountains, and Melissa raised her phone, aiming it at Ryan and me. "Smile for the family page," she said brightly. "Too bright," she added softly. She leaned in closer, angling the camera, her hair brushing lightly against my cheek. I tried to smile, but Ryan's expression was unreadable, his eyes not quite meeting mine. My stomach tightened as I forced a smile, a hollow and strained act. The engine's steady hum filled my chest, drowning out the pounding of my heart while May stepped closer, much nearer than necessary for a photograph. Her phone slipped down to her side, and her lips brushed near my ear. She whispered, "You have always been in the way." It took a moment for the words to sink in, for me to feel the chill in her tone before her hand pressed firmly on my shoulder. I spotted Ryan standing with arms folded, leaning back with a blank expression. He remained motionless, not even a flicker of reaction. I wanted to scream, but the wind ripped the sound from my throat as Melissa shoved me, the world violently tilting. I caught sight of her red lipstick curving into a small, satisfied smile as I stumbled backward. The whiteness of snow and sky engulfed me while I fell. The rotor's roar faded into a dull beat. Thump, 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 matching the rising panic in my chest. The cold air bit at my skin, my hair whipping across my face during the fall. Time fractured. A flash of my mother's hands braiding my hair before my first day at school. The glowing sign of the shop I built from scratch. Ryan's voice telling me, "Trust me, Selena, we are in this together." Trust. Such a beautiful lie. The branches below blurred as instinct screamed louder than fear. I reached out, pleading, clawing at the air until fingers scraped against a thick branch. Pain exploded through my arm as I caught hold. A sudden force twisted my shoulder. Something gave way, burning and intense. Yet I stopped mid-fall. I hung there, gasping, agony cutting through each breath as silence fell over the world, except for the faint rustle of snow drifting from the branches above. The helicopter had vanished, now nothing more than a tiny speck in the sky, carrying away the people who had placed a price of $5 million on my life. I dragged myself closer to the tree trunk, each movement sending waves of torment through me, my vision blurring as blood trickled from a gash on my temple. There were no tears, only breaths and a fierce will to survive. Snow seeped into my jeans, dulling the pain in my legs as I leaned my head against the coarse bark, closing my eyes for a moment and letting the cold wrap around me like a frigid blanket. I longed to sleep, to drift away from everything, but a faint, hoarse whisper escaped, a vow made to no one but myself. Not today. I shut my eyes briefly, allowing the chill to silence the pain before realizing I had to keep moving. This was not courage exactly, but a quiet, stubborn voice inside reminding me that surrender would let them win. The snow beneath me was stained pink where blood had soaked through, and I forced myself to assess the damage. Breath formed clouds in the cold air as I took shallow, sharp gulps. My right leg was bent awkwardly, shooting pain whenever I tried to adjust. My shoulder drooped, useless but still attached. My fingers trembled as I pressed them against the frozen earth, searching for something firm to hold, murmuring phrases my mother used when the world seemed to close in. "You do not get to give up, Selena." Gradually, little by little, I forced myself upward, the biting, cold ground cutting into my palms. The chill inflamed the wounds on my face, awakening every nerve that longed to shut down. I noticed a fallen branch nearby, thick enough to support my weight. Turning onto my side, I dragged it closer, ignoring the tears that blurred my sight. It was not tears, but pain escaping. I planted the branch into the snow, tested its strength, and forced my body to rise, leaning heavily on it as if it were a crutch. The bones in my legs screamed, yet I clenched my teeth and moved onward. One step followed by another. The world dazzled too harshly, the snow's brightness reflecting a merciless sunlight that burned my eyes. Still, I pushed forward, focusing on the sound of snow crunching beneath my boots with each uneven step. Time lost meaning. Hours might have passed, or perhaps mere minutes, as pain distorted all I could perceive into the next step and the next breath. The wind tore through my jacket, slicing to the damp sweat chilling my back. I told myself to keep pressing on and warned that stopping meant never rising again. That was what Melissa and Ryan were hoping for, was it not? A shape emerged from the distance, low and partly buried by the snowdrift. At first I thought it was a trick of the mind, but as I limped closer, it narrowed down to a small ranger's cabin, its windows glazed with frost and the porch swallowed by snow. I dragged myself forward, each breath a harsh growl, until I reached the door, pounding on it with the last ounce of my strength. No response. I tested the knob and found it unlocked, the door creaking open to a rush of warmer air inside. The cabin smelled of aged wood and lingering smoke, but it was refuge. I stumbled in, the door shutting behind me, then dropped to my knees, trembling. My eyes moved across the room, spotting a wood stove in the corner, a pile of blankets, and a dusty first aid kit perched on a shelf. I crawled over, pulling the kit close and fumbling out bandages with shaking hands. As I wrapped my leg and fashioned a sling around my shoulder, memories surfaced uninvited, both tender and piercing. Melissa as a child, curling against me during storms, whispering, "Don't leave me, Selena. Promise you won't leave me." Her small fingers clutching mine, her eyes wide with fear. She used to dread thunder. I would hold her until she drifted to sleep. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat, forcing my hands to keep moving. That same girl, who once begged me to stay, had just attempted to push me aside forever. The sharp sting of betrayal burned far deeper than the physical pain. A crackling noise shattered the silence, drawing my attention to an old radio on the shelf, its red light blinking steadily. Static hissed before a voice sliced through, coarse and abrupt. A woman presumed dead, her body still missing, believed to have fallen fatally near the ridge. My name echoed clear and weighty in the stale cabin air. They had already written me off, wiped me away as effortlessly as erasing a line from a page. I forced myself to rise, swaying toward the old rotary phone resting on the counter. The screen blinked to life, displaying a weather app showing the cold front moving toward Aspen. A notification appeared. A bank alert. Transaction pending. That number was familiar. The insurance policy we had faithfully paid into for many years. They had already filed the claim. Ryan and Melissa were not waiting for my body to be discovered. A dry, bitter laugh slipped out before turning into a cough that shook my ribs. My tears vanished, leaving my eyes sore and raw. "They think I am dead," I whispered to the empty room, clutching the counter edge to steady myself. "Let them believe it." I grabbed a heavy hunter's coat hanging near the door, its scent of pine and old smoke wrapping around me like armor. My mind sharpened, fear replaced by something colder and harder. I refused to return to them, shattered and pleading. I would come back prepared. Then Vera's voice reached me, clear as if she were right beside me. "Call me if the world burns, Selena." Vera, my old partner who knew how to fight battles that left no bruises but destroyed everything else. I needed to reach her, someone who would trust me before Ryan and May could bury me forever. I found a pair of boots. Near the entrance lay a pair of worn ranger boots, rigid, but still usable. I secured my wounds more tightly, forced my feet into the boots, and wrapped the coat around me once more, steeling myself before opening the door again. The cold hit like a harsh slap, but I allowed it to wash over me, stripping away fear and leaving only determination behind. The chill bit at my cheeks as I stepped outside. The snow crunching under the old ranger boots, and the wind howled past fiercely, as if daring me to stop. One hand gripped the makeshift crutch, the other pressed against my ribs, where each breath pulled painfully. Yet I moved forward step by step because surrender was not an option. In my mind, I could almost hear my mother's voice insisting firmly, "You cannot give up, Selena." Hours passed, though I could not tell how many, as I slowly limped down the slope under a sky shifting from cold steel gray to the bruised purple glow of early dawn. The sharp sting of the cold softened into a dull but constant ache, a reminder that I was still alive despite everything meant to end me. Every slip on the ice sent a jolt racing through my injured leg, but I clenched my jaw and leaned back on the branch for support, whispering promises to myself that I would make them pay for this. The forest thinned ahead, revealing the flicker of a sign buzzing above a small diner on the edge of town. My body begged me to fall and curl up on the cold ground, but I forced myself to press on, dragging myself across the snow-covered parking lot until I pushed the door open. The bell chimed sharply, and heads turned to see who had entered. Silence settled over the room as everyone took in the sight of me, hair tangled with frozen blood, clothes ripped, and face raw from the biting wind and tears. A young waitress stepped forward cautiously, her eyes wide with concern. "Ma'am, do you need assistance?" I did not respond. Instead, I moved past her and collapsed into a corner booth, feeling the cold vinyl seat against my back. My breath came in short, uneven gasps as I scanned the room, searching for something, anything, to hold on to. My gaze settled on the payphone near the restrooms, its metal surface worn with years of use. It was one of those places where nobody asked questions if you needed to make a call. I reached into the pocket of the ranger coat and pulled out a few coins I had found, forcing my trembling fingers to insert them. The dial tone sounded like a lifeline. I dialed the number from memory and leaned my forehead against the wall as it rang. Vera answered with a rasping voice. I said, "It's me." There was a brief pause and then a sharp intake of breath. "Selena, Jesus, they said you were—" I interrupted. "I know what they said. Listen, I need help. Quiet help." "I'm on my way," she replied, calm as always. For a moment, I felt I could breathe again. I hung up just as the television in the corner switched to local news. The headline scrolling across the screen twisted my stomach. Local CEO Selena Thorne missing, presumed dead after helicopter accident. I watched, frozen, as the footage played. Ryan stood at the podium with May close beside him, her face pressed against his shoulder as he wrapped his arm around her. They appeared like grieving relatives, victims of a harsh tragedy rather than the perpetrators they really were. "Please respect our privacy during this difficult period," Ryan spoke into the microphone, his voice trembling in a way I once believed was genuine. Melissa lifted her head, traces of mascara running down her cheeks, trembling as she held tightly to him. Behind them, the emblem of my company loomed prominently, the business I had built through countless hard years while they feigned sorrow for me. A sharp laugh slipped out, and a man at the next table glanced at me before quickly turning away. I bit into my palm, grounding myself. Let them shed their insincere tears for the cameras. Let them believe they had prevailed. The bell above the entrance jingled again, and Vera entered, scanning the diner until her gaze found me. She crossed the room swiftly, her coat still dusted with snowflakes, and slid into the booth opposite me. "God, Selena," she reached out, but I pulled back, not prepared for comfort yet. "I need to examine the financial records," I said. She nodded and pulled out her laptop, connecting effortlessly to the diner's Wi-Fi. We worked quietly, the low murmur of conversation surrounding us like distant noise, while the click of keys filled the air as she navigated to the company's emergency funds. "They transferred everything," she whispered, turning the screen toward me. "A note signed by you was left behind, stating that, in the event of disappearance, the funds would ensure the company's survival." My chest tightened, not from pain but from the weight of realization. They had planned everything so meticulously. They were not only taking my life away, but also making it appear as if I had handed it over willingly. Vera paused before adding, "There is more. Rumors have begun, Selena. The media are insinuating that you were unstable before the accident. They are painting you as paranoid, claiming you spoke of people trying to harm you. They are laying the groundwork." I leaned back, allowing the bitter truth to settle, the sting of betrayal transforming into a fierce drive. They want the world to believe I was mentally unwell, that I fled, or possibly took my own life. Vera shut the laptop, her eyes steely. "What is your plan now?" I clenched my fist so tightly my knuckles blanched. They believe they have triumphed. Meeting Vera's unwavering gaze, I declared, "We will reclaim everything, and if they demand a funeral, I will give them one that remains unforgettable." Outside the funeral home, Vera's black dress hugged her figure, the chill air grazing my bare arms, almost challenging me to turn away. I adjusted the neckline, studying my reflection in the tinted window, searching for the woman they thought had been buried beneath the snow. My breath misted the glass as I murmured, "You are not allowed to give up." It was early afternoon, the wind biting sharply, the sky a pale blue that rendered the world fragile yet alive. The room looked far too pristine to hide the deceit waiting within. Drawing a final breath, I pushed the door open and stepped inside, greeted by the scent of lilies mingled with cheap cologne. A sudden silence swept through the space like a glass shattering. Conversations stopped abruptly. Heads turned, cameras flashed wildly, and gasps spread through the rows as people faced the very ghost they believed they had already mourned. Melissa was halfway through a sob, her handkerchief frozen inches from her face, her eyes wide and unblinking. Ryan stood behind the podium, his mouth hanging open, caught in a word that never left his lips. In the back, a reporter shouted, "Is that her? Is that Selena Thorne?" I kept advancing, the heels Vera lent me clicking steadily on the tiled floor with purpose. Near the entrance, I passed the memorial board, my photo printed in black and white, a black ribbon pinned to the corner. The phrase in loving memory scrolling beneath my name caused me to hesitate momentarily before I fixed my gaze on Ryan. Calmly, I said, "I see the event has started without me," allowing the silence to fall over the room once more. My eyes scanned the crowd. Neighbors, board members, local officials, all gathered to grieve a death that never occurred. Ryan blinked, his face shifting from shock to a rehearsed expression, something meant for public display. Forcing a weak smile, he stepped toward me with open arms. "Selena, thank God you are alive. We believed you were—" I stepped back, leaving his arms dangling uselessly. Save it. The room was once again filled with sharp intakes of breath, whispers spreading like a gentle breeze sweeping through tall grass. Some individuals rose to their feet, retreating as though I might suddenly fall before them. Others gazed with wide-eyed astonishment, phones held high to record the unfolding drama. Melissa was the next to step forward, her hand shaking slightly as she approached. Her face was streaked with fresh tears. "Selena, we thought you had run away. You have been carrying so much stress. Do you not remember? You said people were watching you. You were scared," she said. Her voice trembled, perfectly capturing concern, yet her eyes avoided mine. I felt a sharp clarity settle deep within my chest. "You may tell your fabrications to them," I said, motioning toward the reporters and cameras drawing nearer. "But you cannot deceive me any longer." A wave of murmurs swept through the guests. Reporters leaned in with microphones raised, firing questions rapidly. "Where have you been? Is it true you were unstable before the accident? What exactly happened on the mountain?" Camera flashes erupted like distant lightning, while the air thrummed with quiet chatter and the sharp clicks of shutters. Security moved swiftly, attempting to control the unrest as I remained still amid the storm. Ryan clenched his jaw tightly but maintained his carefully crafted expression of concern, trying to steer me away from the crowd. "Selena, let us take you somewhere safe. You need assistance," he urged. I jerked my arm back, locking eyes with him. "The only help I require is for you to keep your hands off me." From the edge of my vision, I noticed Vera weaving through the crowd, her expression composed, her gaze sharp and focused. She approached quietly, slipping a tiny flash drive into my palm, her lips barely parting as she murmured, "When you are ready." I clenched my hand around it, feeling its reassuring weight amid the turmoil. Cameras continued clicking, questions poured in relentlessly, but the only sound that resonated for me was the calm conviction within. If they expected a funeral, I was determined to deliver one they would remember forever. I tucked the flash drive into my pocket and stepped away from the funeral home. Vera's car waited a block away, and I kept my head down, disregarding the reporters' shouts and camera flashes behind me. We remained silent until the car doors clicked shut. The stillness inside was a sharp contrast to the chaos left behind. We drove through the fading daylight, the sky darkening into evening, street lamps flickering on as we rolled beneath them. I noticed the tension in Vera's hands gripping the steering wheel, but she did not push for an explanation. Instead, she spoke softly. "You need to see what is on this." Her voice was calm and steady, as always when she delivered grim news. In her apartment, we settled by a small table near the window, the city's glow pulsing like a restless heartbeat. She powered up her laptop, its low hum filling the quiet as she inserted the flash drive. For a moment, I gazed out at the blurred lights, feeling the cold creeping through the glass. My hands remained steady, yet inside I felt as if I were standing at the brink of a precipice. The screen lit up with folders and files, marked by dates and cryptic code names I did not recognize initially. Vera navigated through them systematically, opening bank statements and transfer records. Each click felt like a nail being driven further into a coffin. My name appeared there, accompanied by my signature or something resembling it, approving transactions I had never encountered before. Funds were diverted into secret accounts, shuffled around beneath layers of fabricated shell companies. "Selena, look at this." Vera's voice was sharp, but the anger beneath it was unmistakable. She brought up an email exchange, messages between Melissa and Ryan, my sister and my husband, scheming the precise moment they would literally push me aside and cash in on the insurance policy linked to my name. "She is now a liability. We cannot allow her to ruin everything," Ryan's words flashed on the screen. It was as if I were being shoved again, though this time there was no gust of wind to distract me. My breath caught, my hands shook, but my expression remained composed. I read the message twice, then once more, letting the betrayal etch itself into my mind. They had orchestrated this fully, every part of it. My voice was soft, yet contained enough edge to pierce the silence of the room. Vera did not reply right away, simply grabbing her phone and calling her lawyer acquaintance. We can freeze your joint accounts, she said after finishing the call, and begin the procedure to reclaim control of the company before they drain everything. The following morning, the three of us gathered in a small, stuffy office at a downtown law firm, the atmosphere heavy with recycled warmth and silent tension. Papers rustled as the lawyer's hands moved swiftly, pulling up documents, reviewing account statuses, and confirming signatures. His gaze shifted rapidly between Ryan and me, his lips pressed tightly together. At last, he rose, his complexion pale. "Selena, I regret to inform you that they have already submitted papers declaring you mentally incompetent. They acted quickly. Your accounts are currently frozen under a protective restriction, and they are working to seize control over your voting privileges in the business." The walls seemed to close in around me, the air thick and suffocating. I could still hear the echo of May's voice and feel her hand on my back just before she pushed me. Ryan's vacant look as I stumbled replayed in my mind. Clenching my fists, I felt my nails press deep into my palms. They had anticipated my arrival. Speaking quietly, mostly to myself rather than to Ryan or the lawyer, I recounted every second, every deceit, each cold smile, and every whispered promise to trust them. "I need a moment," I said, rising and moving into the hallway to find the restroom at the far end. The mirror above the sink was fractured, a jagged crack distorting my reflection. Gripping the edges of the basin, I let the cool porcelain steady me as tears blurred my sight, but I wiped them away, allowing fury to lift the haze. "Not this time," I whispered to the woman staring back at me, the woman they underestimated. They believed they could break the woman they left for dead. I returned to the office, locking eyes with Vera. "We will find another solution," I said, letting the determination in my voice fill the space. "They want me to crumble. That is exactly how they will fail." As we packed up, ready to leave, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out, the screen glowing with a message from an unfamiliar number. "I know what they did. Meet me." I stared at those words, the world shrinking to the light of the screen. This could be either an ally or a trap. I had to confront them. I met Vara's gaze before stepping out of her apartment, the message still shining on my phone. I didn't reveal the details, only that I had to pursue this lead. She wanted to join me, but I shook my head, promising to call if anything went wrong. The cold air stung my skin as I walked the few blocks to the diner, the kind with a neon sign flickering faintly, humming quietly in the still night. Slipping into a corner booth, I kept my back against the wall, and my eyes watched every shadow crossing the fogged windows. The scent of burnt coffee mixed with fried grease saturated the air, reminding me that I was alive and far from finished. I traced the edge of the chipped coffee cup before me, focusing on steadying my breath. The bell over the door jingled as a man in a faded green jacket entered, scanning the room until his gaze locked on me. He approached deliberately, with the wariness of someone who had been hurt too many times before, and as he drew nearer, I noticed a slight limp in his stride. He eased into the booth opposite me, taking off a knit cap to expose untidy hair and weary eyes. "My name is Aaron," he said quietly, scanning the surroundings before leaning closer. "I am aware of what Melissa and your husband did to you." I did not flinch. "How?" I asked. He exhaled deeply, running a hand across his jaw. "I used to be employed by Melissa. In fact, I was foolish enough to believe I cared for her. She manipulated me and discarded me once I was no longer useful. But before she cast me aside, I made copies of certain things that would devastate her reputation if they ever came to light." I studied him closely, searching for deceit. Why now? Why approach me? His gaze dropped to the table, fingers tracing a crack in the surface. "Because I have witnessed how she ruins lives and walks away grinning. I thought I could dismiss it and move on. But when I caught sight of your face on the news and heard the stories they told about you, I could no longer stay silent. I did not trust him entirely, yet I chose to believe him. Perhaps I just wanted to believe someone because I needed hope, anything to shift the balance." He retrieved a small key from his pocket and slid it toward me. There is a storage unit just 2 blocks from here. Everything you need is inside. Fake medical documents, insurance papers, even emails between her and your husband discussing how to deal with you. The word deal made me clutch the key more tightly than intended. I slipped it into my pocket, eyes fixed on his. Why are you helping me, Aaron? You are aware of what she is capable of. He let out a hollow laugh. Yes, I am. But perhaps I am done running away. I left some money on the table and rose to my feet, sensing the weight of every gaze in the diner as we stepped into the freezing air again. Ryan met us a block away, his car waiting under a street lamp, the exhaust misting in the chilly atmosphere. We barely spoke while driving to the storage unit, the tires gliding over the wet road being the sole sound bridging the silence between us. Inside the unit, the fluorescent lights blinked as I turned the key, dragging the metal door open with a sharp screech. Boxes were stacked neatly, tagged with dates and names that churned my stomach. Melissa's handwriting sprawled everywhere, her precise script taunting me from those labels, files about my health, false diagnoses, her schemes to portray me as unstable and secure the payout. Vera gasped softly while flipping through a folder. Selena, this is enough to bury them. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed, the screen glowing with a video call. It was her. I tapped accept, holding the phone away as Melissa's face appeared, serene yet chilling in a way that made my skin crawl. Well, look at you, she purred, tilting her head, digging where you should not be. You know where I am? I asked calmly, despite my racing heart. She smirked, eyes cold and unmoving. Of course I do. Do you think you have won, Selena? Do you believe you are clever? You have always seemed so delicate. It is almost charming that you believe you can stand against me. You attempted to end my life. Her smile never wavered. Watch your words carefully. I still have allies in powerful positions. And if you even consider making any of this public, she gestured toward the containers behind me, I will ensure that every grim secret you tried to hide will be exposed for the world to see. Do you honestly imagine they would take your side once all truths are revealed? The call ended before I could respond, leaving me staring at my reflection in the dark screen. The chill from the device settled deeply in my bones as fear crept in, yet I forced myself to breathe and concentrate. Back in the car, the weight of everything pressed down on me, suffocating as I gazed through the windshield into the shadows. Melissa's voice lingered in my mind, the memory of her shoving me, the rush of air, the cold, the betrayal. She is still pulling all the strings, I murmured, my hands trembling as I covered my eyes. Vera reached out, holding my hand tight. She is frightened, Selena. That is why she is striking out. She knows you are alive and she is aware you are coming after her. I exhaled shakily, wiping the tears from my face, letting the fury drown out the fear. I turned to Vera with steady words, then let her be afraid. It is my moment now. We headed back to Vera's place, the boxes secured in the trunk, our silence no longer heavy but charged, alive with determination. As we parked, I glanced behind. The storage unit key felt heavy in my hand. Turning to Vera, I said softly, yet firmly, I need to open that locker again. There is a file inside that could either set me free or ruin everything I still have. I stepped out of Vera's car, clutching the folder close to my chest, the chilly Denver wind stinging my face like a sharp reminder that I was alive and still fighting. The snow crunched beneath my boots as I headed toward the courthouse, each breath forming a fleeting mist in the early morning light. This was the moment. No more hiding, no more allowing people to dictate when I deserved to live. Inside, the hallway reeked of old coffee and cleaning agents. Vera walked beside me, briefly brushing her hand against mine before releasing it, letting me take charge. We passed security where the guard gave me a suspicious look as I placed the folder onto the conveyor. I held his gaze steadily without hesitation. They were waiting in a private conference room near the courthouse. May sat perfectly straight, her hair pulled back, wearing a mask of concern. My husband was there too, feigning sorrow so convincingly I nearly believed it. But the fleeting look of fear in his eyes when he saw me sent a shiver through my spine. A few others accompanied them. His lawyer, a family friend who always expected the worst from me, and a woman who kept glancing at her phone as if desperate to be anywhere else. I shut the door firmly behind me, the sound sharp enough to capture everyone's attention in the room. I did not bother to take a seat. Instead, I let the folder fall onto the table, the noise cutting through the quiet air. "Selena," my husband began, rising as if ready to pull me into a warm hug like a scene from a reunion film. I raised a hand. "Do not." His mouth moved silently, and then he returned to his seat, eyes flickering toward May, who had turned pale before her lips curved into that familiar, mocking grin. "Well," she said, folding her hands calmly, "look who finally decided to appear. We were genuinely worried about you." I ignored her, flipping through the folder and spreading out the papers across the table. They showed emails, bank transfers, insurance files, and counterfeit medical documents, proof of their misdeeds written plainly in black and white. "This is what you did," I stated quietly, but firmly, despite my heart pounding. "This is the truth about who you are." May chuckled softly, but there was no warmth in her laugh. "Selena, come on. This is just embarrassing. You have always had these moments. We tried helping you, but you refuse our aid, do not you?" She glanced around, as if looking for approval. "She is unstable," she told the others with a tone full of disdain. "She has always been unstable." I stared directly into her eyes, letting the silence stretch until she finally broke eye contact. I whispered, "You have always been in my way. Before, you pushed me out of that helicopter. You never thought I would survive to say this to your face, did you?" The tension in the room thickened, to vanish from the space. Even my spouse avoided my gaze now, eyes fixed on the tabletop, his hands balled into fists. "You have no evidence for any of these claims," May snapped, her calm beginning to falter. Outside, Vera and Aaron were busy, and I was certain of it. I sensed it from the way my phone kept buzzing in my pocket. Message after message illuminated the screen. While May continued speaking, Vera uploaded parts of the proof online, tagging local media outlets, neighborhood groups, and everyone who had ever trusted May's falsehoods. "Your fabrications will not succeed anymore," I said softly. Melissa's phone vibrated repeatedly. She stared down at it, eyes growing wide as she scrolled, her complexion fading. The room was filled with the gentle sound of alerts, phones lighting up one after another. My husband's attorney cleared his throat, glancing first at him, then at May, before turning his eyes toward me with a look almost resembling admiration. A family acquaintance who had always disliked me shifted uneasily in her seat. Melissa's hands trembled as she gripped her phone tightly, her gaze darting side to side like a trapped creature. "Do you believe this is finished?" she hissed, rising abruptly, her chair tumbling behind her. I moved forward, my tone calm. "No, this is only the start." She glared fiercely, her jaw tightening, but no words came. For once, she had nothing to distort, nothing left to conceal. I took control, gathering the pages slowly and carefully, making sure she understood that I was in control now and no longer afraid of her. When I stepped outside into the sharp air, the cold did not feel like a punishment this time. Instead, it felt like liberation, fresh and pure, washing away the fear and all those years when they decided who I was supposed to be. My phone vibrated once more, but I did not check it right away. For the first time in a long while, I felt the ground firm beneath my feet, the air filling my lungs, and my mind clear enough to breathe. I knew this battle was far from over, but I was ready. As I pushed open the courthouse doors, the chilly morning air hit me hard and genuine, anchoring me for what lay ahead. A crowd had gathered, reporters jostling each other, cameras flashing everywhere, people holding up their phones, streaming every single second of my emergence into the daylight. I clutched the folder to my chest, breathing deeply, reminding myself why I had to continue, why I could never let them silence me again. The whispers grew louder as I moved onward. I caught bits of conversation. "Is that her? She is alive. What is happening?" My hands shook momentarily before I tightened my grip and steadied my breath. This was no longer just about me. It was about every person ever pushed aside, told they mattered nothing, forced to smile while people like Melissa and Ryan stole everything. Just as I started finding my pace, phones around me buzzed, notifications lighting up screens, and faces turned toward each other with curiosity. Confusion filled the air. Vera stood beside me, her phone in hand, eyes rapidly scanning the flood of breaking headlines. "Selena," she murmured. "They are trying to manipulate the story." May had acted swiftly. Alerts appeared, revealing fabricated documents bearing my falsified signature, accusing me of diverting company funds into personal accounts. The headlines branded me as unstable, a deceiver, a woman who had staged her own death to conceal her wrongdoings. My name was trending, but for all the negative reasons. For a moment, the fear I had struggled so hard to suppress resurfaced, cold and haunting. The fear of being ignored, of losing everything once more, of watching them steal from me while pretending to care. I glanced down at a puddle by my feet, catching a distorted reflection of the woman they had tried to break, silence and erase. "Are you prepared?" Vera whispered next to me. I lifted my gaze to her, then to the onlookers and the cameras still rolling. Pulling my phone from my pocket, I gripped it so tightly my knuckles ached. "Yes," I replied, raising my head. "I am ready." We stepped onto the stairs, the crowd parting as we advanced. Vera connected my phone to the compact projector we had brought, and the image shone on the courthouse wall. People turned, their eyes widening as the video began. Melissa appeared in the footage, laughing over a glass of wine, her speech slurred as she leaned closer to the camera. "She has always been in the," she said calmly, clinking her glass against the ruins. "She never anticipated it. Everything changed with just a small nudge. Easy cash." Their expressions were unmistakable, the words laid out plainly, the reality exposed for all to witness. A shared gasp echoed through the crowd. Phones were raised high, capturing every moment streaming live. Some covered their lips in shock, others shouted in disbelief, the wave of awareness spreading rapidly. I noticed people glancing from their screens to me and back to the footage. I could see them grasping the truth. From the crowd's edge, I spotted Melissa's crew trying to push forward, shouting for the video to be taken down, begging people to stop filming, but it was too late. The footage had already gone viral. Suddenly, Melissa appeared, her face flushed, eyes wild as she charged at me, yelling, "You ruined everything." Her voice cracked with raw fury, her carefully built image collapsing with every step she took towards me. Security acted swiftly, pulling her back as she kicked and screamed, her threats piercing the cold air. "I will destroy you!" she shrieked. "You think you have won?" I stood still as the chaos around me faded into a quiet blur while I watched her struggle, her power fading away. I felt no sympathy, no fear, only freedom. Voices began to chant my name, people clapping, some reaching out to touch my shoulder as they passed. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. I lifted my head, allowing reality to sink in around us. The Denver air was sharp and biting, clearing away the heavy burden I had carried for far too long. As the security team escorted Melissa away, a reporter stepped forward, her microphone trembling slightly as she asked, "Selena, what comes next for you now that everything is revealed?" I paused, turning to face her and then the crowd, their expressions a mix of hope, curiosity, and disbelief. A faint, weary smile appeared on my lips. "Now," I declared, my voice calm and resolute, carrying across the gathering, "I live." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I opened my eyes to tranquility. The city skyline greeted me through the window, Denver's early light casting a soft, forgiving glow over the buildings. I slowly sat up, the sheets bringing warmth with them, and clasped the coffee Vera had placed on the nightstand before leaving for her morning meeting. The steam rose toward my face as I inhaled deeply, letting it fill the parts inside me that had been hollow for too long. My thoughts wandered, the silence only broken by the heater's gentle hum. I recalled the moment May first held my hand. We were just kids, standing on the brink of our parents' separation. May gripped the paper crane I had folded for her, whispering, "Don't leave me." That memory stung more than anything else because she was the one who walked away first, repeatedly, culminating in the ultimate betrayal that nearly ended my life. The pain was more than just from betrayal. The sound carried the weight of a family turned unfamiliar, of love twisted into a weapon. I placed the coffee down and lifted my phone, scrolling through the overwhelming stream of messages. Some were filled with hatred, accusing me of lying and insisting I deserved all that had occurred. Others came from strangers who shared their experiences of betrayal and how they rose again when the world wanted them to stay down. I deleted the threats, blocked the numbers, and set the phone aside. My hand moved to the folder containing the final documents Melissa had prepared. I signed each page, reclaiming full ownership of my company. Every signature felt like a fresh breath of liberation. Later that morning, Melissa returned, her hair tied in a low bun, a weary smile gracing her face as she handed me another cup of coffee. We settled in her small kitchen, the city vibrant outside the window with cars and people bustling under the promise of a new day. "Will you ever forgive her?" Melissa asked quietly, her eyes searching mine while sipping from her mug. Tears rose, but I held them back, my throat tightening as I shook my head. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe forgiveness is not about her, but about allowing myself to move on." Melissa reached out, gently squeezing my hand before releasing it. The silence between us felt comforting, a quiet reminder that I was no longer alone. In the afternoon, I walked to the community center I had quietly helped establish years ago, a refuge for women beginning anew, rebuilding after the storms life had thrown at them. I moved among them like a shadow, unnoticed. Observing the laughter, hushed talks, and small triumphs over paperwork and tasks brought a sense of warmth. The vibrant hues worn by the children playing in the corner caught my eye. It felt natural to stand there and witness these women gradually rediscovering themselves piece by piece. A little girl no older than 6, with curly hair and large brown eyes, gently pulled at my coat. She showed me a paper crane, its wings neatly folded though slightly uneven at the edges. "For hope," she whispered shyly, placing it in my hand before rushing back to her mother. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling the softness of the paper in my palm, recalling the day I had folded a crane for myself, speaking the same word, hope. The circle was imperfect, yet it was enough. As I walked through the city with the sun setting, every step felt like a vow to myself. Trust might never fully come back, and some scars would need longer to heal than others. Yet I was alive, free and strong enough to keep moving ahead without fear of being silenced once more. I paused at the quiet corner of a small park, took out my phone and faced the camera towards me. My reflection looked back, older, wiser, still bearing the shadows of hardship survived, but with a light in my eyes that had been absent for far too long. "Have you ever endured something like this?" I asked gently, letting my words sink into the calm atmosphere. "Share your story." I read each response carefully. When done, I stopped the recording and slipped the phone away. I slid my hand into my pocket as I faced the glowing lights of the street up ahead. The air felt chilly, yet refreshing, and I welcomed it, letting it fill my lungs with every breath. I took one step, then another, each one feeling more effortless than the previous. For the very first time, I realized I did not require anyone's validation to feel alive. I was sufficient exactly as I was.